You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 173 of the Just Japan podcast, everything you want to know about Japan. My name's Kevin, and I'm the host of the Just Japan podcast, a podcast that brings you each and every week a new aspect of life in Japan, stuff about travel, stuff about history, hobbies, jobs, you name it, we cover it. 172 episodes so far, and we're happy to bring you another great one. This week, it's all about travel in Japan, and if you ever come to Japan, a really wonderful option for you is to stay in the kind of traditional Japanese inn known as Ryokan. And of course, if you're in Japan, you really need to take the time to relax, slow down, and enjoy the comforts of life. The onsen, that's right, natural hot springs. They're throughout Japan. They're amazing. They're wonderful. I recommend them. But you know what? This week we've got a man who knows a heck of a lot more about onsen and ryokan than I do. I'm very fortunate to have been able to sit down with Rob Goss, who is a travel writer based out of Tokyo, and he recently published a book about onsen and ryokan in Japan. So he's going to tell us all about it later on in the podcast. Now, of course, you can find the Just Japan podcast on all major podcatchers. Just do a Google search for us. And I want to thank all you awesome people out there for listening. This month, January, has been a fantastic month for the Just Japan podcast. Of course, I was basically kind of dormant with the podcast for more than 6 months when I made my big move from Japan to Beijing. But now we're back each and every week, and it's amazing that so many of you have tuned back in and are enjoying the episodes and downloading them. So to all of you listeners, thank you very much. And of course, I've been very active over on the Just Japan Stuff Facebook page. That's a Facebook page for the podcast. Loads of great content about Japan over there. So go like Just Japan Stuff on Facebook. And of course, the home of the podcast is justjapanstuff.com. Go there, check it out. That's where the show notes are each and every week, and you can find all the links to the things that I talk about in the podcast. And yeah, of course, you follow me on Twitter at jlandkev, and that does it. So folks, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this week's episode, where I sit down and talk to Rob Goss, who wrote a book. And he's written a lot of books about Japan, but the most recent one is about onsen and ryokan. So let's learn a little bit more about what those are. Okay, all right, folks out there in Just Japan podcast land. It is episode number 173 of the show, and this evening we're going to be talking about onsens and ryokan in Japan. And if you don't know what those are, well, I've got the person to tell you all about it this evening. With us this evening here at the Just Japan podcast is first-time guest Rob Goss. Rob, thank you for joining us. Hello?
Oh, we've gone dead already, haven't we?
Oh my gosh, eh? It's amazing. We have. Okay. I'll just kick that off again and cross our fingers. Okay, folks, so it's episode number 173 of the podcast, and this evening we're going to be talking about onsens and ryokan in Japan. And if you don't know what an onsen is or a ryokan, I've got the right person for you this evening. It's first-time guest Rob Goss. Rob, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Kevin.
That's great. Now, actually, Rob, we tried this interview a few months ago, but we had some connectivity problems. One of the issues you have when you live behind the Great Firewall of China. But Rob was kind enough to join us again, and we're going to give it another whirl. So, Rob, can you tell the Just Japan podcast listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do here in Japan?
Okay. I'm trying not to repeat what I said last time.
Well, it doesn't matter because no one ever heard that interview.
Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? But well, I'm a writer, and I'm based in Tokyo. But originally, I'm from Dartmoor National Park in the southwest of England.
Okay.
And I came over here in 1999 as a novelty teacher, which I'm sure lots of people listening to this, if they're based in Japan, would have come over perhaps as Nova or ECC or one of those kind of companies. So I think I've come over in the same way that many other people have come to Japan, and then you just find your own way, you know.
You kind of transition out of that. Yeah, it's amazing.
I've got a dog next to me trying to get out of the room I'm in, so can I just
Yeah, no problem.
throw the dog out? Okay, done.
Nice. It's
Okay.
it's very interesting because
Okay,
what I was just going to say is that with regards to you said that you came over in 1999 with Nova.
Yeah.
Over the years I've been doing this podcast, I've interviewed some extremely interesting people who have very interesting stories and do very diverse things, and it's amazing how many people you meet who have done those things, who are came over as Nova teachers or as like you said, the Eikaiwa teachers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nowadays I meet lots of ex-jet teachers, and I think that's because the people who tend to do jet seem to learn Japanese very well because they're based in the countryside very well.
True. Yeah.
So I think the jet guys really do get a great start in Japan. Whereas when I was at Nova, I don't think any of us spoke a word of Japanese.
Yeah, true.
Because just ordering in Shirokiya and places like that.
True enough, right? I suppose people who are in jet, who are in the rural areas and take the effort and have that opportunity to really learn Japanese, once they're done with jet and they decide they want to stay in Japan, because they've got the language skills, they've got a lot more opportunities, right?
Yeah, but it's good as well, isn't it? It's nice to see that you can come over to do something and then up for you, or can if you keep an open mind about it.
Yeah, true. Very true. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your interest in Japan. How did that happen? Like, how did you end up coming to Japan in the first place? Were you interested in Japan since you were a child?
Not at all. To be honest, it was. I almost feel a bit of a charlatan because lots of the people who come over and stay for a long time, it was pretty much the exchange rate was very good, and I had lots of student loans to pay off.
Okay.
Well, I'd come and teach English for a year, and that might pay off enough student loans for me to go back to university to do postgraduate.
Mm-hmm.
But then I met a student, an adult, who is now my wife.
Okay, yeah.
And things changed very quickly, yeah.
Nice. And so
it's almost embarrassing because so many people do have that real passion that they come to Japan with, which is a very positive thing. I quite like talking to people when they come over with, a real goal. But I came over quite aimlessly and just ended up staying here. Nice.
And here you are. Okay, and now you are living in Tokyo, and you're no longer a teacher. You are a travel writer. So can you tell us a little bit about where that began? How did your writing career blossom, so to speak? And can you tell us a little bit about the kind of writing work you do?
Okay, it's quite a convoluted story. So I suppose if I start with what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I write books about Japan, quite often guidebooks, sometimes like the Onsen and Ryokan book. It's not really a guide book, it's more of a book about the culture.
Mm-hmm.
I write features for people like National Geographic, Traveller, in-flight magazines, and different companies like that.
Okay.
But that's now, but I got into it about 10 years ago. Because, I realized that I was about to get married, and I was still an English teacher, and I know lots of people like teaching, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So I had to find a thing I could do that I wanted to do to stay here.
Yeah.
So I did a postgraduate diploma of journalism.
Oh, really? Okay.
Whilst I was teaching, because I was teaching mostly Eikaiwa at the time. Slack schedule, which is one of the great benefits of it. I didn't like the teaching, but the schedule was fantastic. So I could actually do a postgraduate diploma quite comfortably whilst teaching.
Nice, nice.
That meant I was studying about journalism, and then I started selling my coursework basically to overseas magazines. And then that made me realize that if they're taking work from a student, they must be a niche, or there must be something.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me the idea that I could focus on, rather than trying to get a job within a media company, I could do freelancing and sell work for overseas.
Okay.
And it all came from there.
So you've essentially been freelancing, for the better part of or most of your writing career.
Yeah, I did a year as the deputy editor of a magazine called The Hiraganas, which I imagine some people listening to this will know, because it's a bilingual thing. It's quite good for studying Japanese or English.
Actually, you cut out for a moment. Can you say one more time the name of the magazine?
Yeah, okay. So it's the Hiragana Times.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I can remember leafing through that, even years ago when I originally came to Japan, say maybe 2008, and going to different bookstores with the English section and looking through that magazine.
That's about the time I would have been there for my year as deputy editor.
Okay.
It's quite a long time ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's quite a quirky magazine, because I love the people there to bits, but it's ugly as hell to look at. It's got a really old-fashioned design. It's quite gaudy, but it's actually very functional. It really is quite a good thing for studying Japanese or studying English, because the way they pair the text next to each other.
Nice. Yeah.
So my only experience in real media, if you want to call it real media, and so the rest has been freelancing.
Wow, cool. And now, the reason why I've I asked you to come on the podcast is because I've always been interested in onsen culture, ryokan culture. I think the first time I ever went to something like an onsen, it would have been an equivalent of a sento, I suppose. In when I used to live in Korea, those are very popular in Korea. They're called jimjeolbang.
Really?
I think. But those are more like sentos, and I used to go to them all the time when I lived there. And when I came to Japan, I remember one of the first vacations my wife and I had together was to go to Kinosaki Onsen town in Hyogo Prefecture.
Okay.
Because I lived in Kobe my entire almost 10 years in Japan. But you recently published a book about onsens and ryokan culture and whatnot. You mentioned that the ryokan is kind of a way of pampering yourself in Japan, a very kind of relaxing way of having a vacation or maybe taking some time off. Now, what exactly is the ryokan is more like a traditional Japanese inn. Wouldn't maybe that be a good way of describing it?
So, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Now an onsen. What the heck is that? For the people out there who might not know,
onsen is basically okay. The onsen is basically the natural hot spring water, or the hot spring bath.
Okay.
And for example, if you go to a ryokan in Kyoto, you don't always get an onsen with it in a city center kind of inn.
Mm-hmm.
But where you went in, was it Kinosaki?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Then you're more out in the countryside, and you've got basically they usually go together. The ryokan has a natural hot spring bath or baths, and that's the onsen.
Okay. So the onsen is that now, but there's so often the onsen is part of the ryokan, right?
Yeah, usually, and so very often you'll get a couple of big communal onsen baths, one for women, one for men, and you might get some private ones you can rent for yourself, or you might have, if it's an expensive place, you might have one in your hotel room.
Nice. I haven't had one of those. More the communal experience.
Yeah, the communal thing's nice though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is fine.
I know one of your questions sent through was about people being nervous about getting naked. That's something that it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
I'll whip my clothes off anywhere.
The middle of Shibuya.
Well, almost anywhere. I'm not on a cold night, but but if you're in somewhere, let's say that's got a communal onsen, and you're feeling quite nervous about taking your clothes off, you can still rent the private one.
Mm. True, true.
So there's a nice balance there. You can go and rent a little place just for you. You go to the communal place. You could spend extra and have one in your room. You've got all sorts of options. It's not just about getting naked with strangers. So, nice balance.
Nice. Now, the ryokan and the onsen, would you say that these are kind of an important historical or an important part of Japanese culture?
Oh. But again, when you say important, I mean, if they weren't there, would anyone mind? I don't know.
I suppose life would continue,
you could
right?
get past it, couldn't you?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. But I think they're a really nice way, especially if I think about me living in Tokyo, and my wife is Japanese, and my son is a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we live in a place, a small apartment. It's very modern. There's no tatami flooring. There's no Japanese design whatsoever.
Okay.
Our life is very modern in a Japanese sense. And the only chance that say, my wife would have to do something traditional is to go to an onsen, perhaps, or a ryokan, and that's the place where you can enjoy the tatami flooring, the traditional meal, the nice bath. You can change into the traditional clothing, like the yukata gown. So I think it's a nice way for people to connect with Japanese tradition still when they're living a very modern life, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, absolutely.
Maybe playing it a little bit, but I think there's that element to it.
Well, I guess
I also think that...
Mm-hmm. No, continue.
Okay, sorry. In terms of craftsmanship of creating the rooms and like the wooden decorations you might find in a room, or all these other little design elements, the fact that the ryokan are still there means that the craftsmen still have a job to do.
Sure.
So there are all these little tie-ins, Well, I think they are important. They're important to me anyway. And I'm one of the foreigners in Japan who generally traditional Japanese things don't do much for me.
Okay.
So it's kind of odd in a way that I really like this particular traditional element.
Nice.
I would have never thought of myself as kind of really getting into a traditional Japanese thing, but I guess this one does something for me that I'd never thought about.
So I suppose that falls really nicely into the question. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, why should people visiting Japan experience onsens and ryokan? And I guess in a way, that's an opportunity for them to another opportunity for them to experience the traditional side of Japan.
Yeah, I think so. But also, I mean, it's not the case with every place, because there are some inns that are very focused on overseas tourists.
Okay.
So they will change their offerings slightly. They'll water things down. But in most parts, it's a chance to do something Japanese that genuinely is Japanese. It's not like going to watch a ninja show or something like that, which is, it's still fun, but it's very touristy.
Yeah.
You're doing something the Japanese actually do, and you're doing it in a way that the Japanese do it, which I hate the term authentic, but because it gets overplayed a bit. But it is, isn't it? That I can't think of a better word for it. It's an authentic Japanese experience.
Well, I mean,
it's one that is.
No, I was just thinking that years ago, like I mentioned, how I visited Kinosaki Onsen with my wife, and one of the things that I really remember about that place is that we were staying in one onsen, but you could you could put on the kind of like yukata and have your sandals, and you could wander around. I think there were 7 or 8 different like public onsens just around the downtown area that you could just visit, and you just see all these people, just couples wandering around wearing the yukatas outside, going from one onsen to another onsen to another onsen, and it was a really even I have to admit I did that early on in my Japan days, but now that I look back at it, that was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think I did something. I can't remember where it was. Maybe Minakami or somewhere like that was my first onsen trip when I was still dating my wife.
Yeah.
And it's really quite striking. Oh, Kawaguchiko, that's it. Sorry, Kawaguchiko. And it's really it's odd when you come from Tokyo and suddenly you're not that far away from Tokyo, but there are people walking around in the streets in yukata, and
yeah,
it's a really different kind of feeling. But it's quite a natural thing that's happening. It's not like going to a theme park. People dress up. It's a natural expression, I think, of culture.
Yeah. Now,
and even so, having said all that, I still never put the yukata on at all because I feel really kind of uncomfortable in the yukata. I can't explain why, but
okay.
Maybe because I'm 6 foot tall and they never fit properly. I don't know, but
well, I'm 5'7", so I never have that issue. Yeah. They fit just right. Now, we already kind of touched on it before a little bit. One of the questions I had for you was, advice for people who might be a bit shy about public nudity. But that kind of also leads me into asking, and there's just something I just thought of off the top of my head. Obviously a lot of people who are American, they are British, they are Australian, Canadian. In 2018, a lot of us, well, I'm not, but a lot of people are sporting tattoos. And a few onsens I've been to clearly have signs that say no tattoos allowed. Can you tell us a little bit about, because I've had over the years a lot of people contact me asking me questions about that. They're like, hey Kevin, I want to go to Japan. I would love to go to onsens, but I have tattoos. What advice would you have, first of all? I guess you already touched on it, for the people who might be scared of the nudity thing, but also people who do have tattoos.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that came up this week on Twitter. I think it was the at Being Tokyo account, wasn't it? Where
oh really? I didn't see that.
Someone was just it's quite interesting because I know it's got the Yakuza mafia connection, hasn't it?
Yes, in Japan, yeah, traditionally.
Basically, the mafia were the guys with tattoos, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so by banning tattoos, they were basically banning mafia from coming into places.
I guess they weren't. The sign didn't say no mafia, no yakuza, basically, but their way of saying no tattoos, because everyone who was a mobster had tattoos. It was their way of keeping those people out.
It's ridiculously outdated.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any tattoos, but it's madness to think that just because you have a tattoo, you can't go and take a bath.
Yes.
And I think mainly nowadays this applies to Sento, public bathhouses.
Okay.
Because where you're paying, I haven't been to one, so I don't know how much you pay. 300 yen, 500 yen, I don't know.
Something like that, yeah. Maybe about 500 yen, maybe, yeah.
And I can imagine if you're in there paying that much money and someone else using the bath points out he's got a tattoo, you could get thrown out. As ridiculous as that is, it could happen.
So yeah, I mean,
ryokan are a different beast because you're paying a lot of money to go to ryokan. Even if it's a different kind of customer because you're staying there for the night. And I've never heard of a ryokan telling people who are paying to stay that they can't also bath.
Well, there was actually I stayed in one. I stayed in one last December in Shikoku, in right on the opposite end of Awaji Island, so near Naruto, and that was a ryokan we were staying. We were staying at this onsen, a ryokan, for a few days, and they actually had a sign that said right in front of the public bath, a sign in English. It said no tattoos.
That's insane, isn't it?
And
honestly, my advice for that would be just go and get in the bath. And if seriously, if someone picks you up on it and you're paying to stay, just give them hell. That's the only way. The only way that you'll actually get kind of slightly backward thinking hotel owners or ryokan owners to change is if you kick up a fuss, because no one in Japan likes someone shouting at them in the lobby, do they? Especially if they're naked and tapped and just come out wet from a bath.
They're naked, they're wet, and they're Canadian. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're like me, they look like a Yeti. So they wouldn't want that. Honestly, there's no legal grounding. You don't sign a contract that when you go into a ryokan that says, I've got a tattoo, so I hereby forego my right to have a bath. And so I think you don't really need to worry about it with a ryokan. Nice. Unless you're visiting a ryokan as I'm not sure, how do you say it? You're not staying there, but you're going to use their bath as an outside guest.
Oh, okay.
As a center, then it might be different. But if you're staying there, I wouldn't worry about it.
If you're paying the $5, the 500 yen versus paying several $100s a night.
If you're paying $700, don't worry about it. Most people won't kick up a fuss if there is a law in place, or not a law, if they have a MAME guideline in place. Yeah. And if they do, just it's really not worth worrying about.
Nice. Good advice. You heard that. You heard that, folks. That's from the expert himself.
Guy. Yeah, give him hell.
Give him hell. Nice. Okay. Well, you've recently published a book about ryokan and onsens. So I'm curious. Can you tell us a little about the book, what the title is, and about the process of writing it? How did it all come together?
Okay, the book, which I don't have in front of me, so I might get the title wrong. It's Japanese Inns and Hot Springs, and then it's got a very long subtitle I can't remember, but it's Japanese Inns and Hot Springs.
Okay.
And basically, it covers. I'm the writer. The photographer is an 82-year-old Japanese guy called Akihiko Seki. And what we did is we focused on 40 best ryokan in the country. Obviously, there's no such thing as the 40 best. There could be 100 great ones, 150 great ones, but we've taken 40.
Okay.
Naturally, there's quite a big focus on Kyoto areas like Hakone, places like that. And there's nothing in Okinawa because Okinawa really seem to have much onsen action going on, or not onsen and ryokan. And so we've got 40 of these things, and basically it looks at what makes each one of these 40 places different, what you can do in the area whilst you're there, and then there are sections up front about etiquette.
Okay.
This doesn't include anything on tattoos, which maybe I should do on the second edition. And also how a stay kind of, what's the process of a stay? You walk in, you're met in the lobby, you take your shoes off, you have the welcome drink, and it kind of takes you through standard stay like.
Okay.
And the idea is that hopefully it will kind of, I think some people are kind of put off because they think it's such a Japanese thing. It might be difficult to really get into. But hopefully, if you read it before you go, you get a good sense of, okay, now I know what's going to happen, and I can relax a little and just let it happen.
Okay, nice. Now, by the way,
all of the places.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just actually looking at. So we've got a now, we got a lag there. So Just Japan podcast listeners, if you're wondering why it sounds a bit kind of confusing as we have our back and forth, Rob and I, we've got some internet connectivity issues, so there's a bit of a lag back and forth. But I was just going to say, Rob, I went to your Twitter feed. I'm looking right now at the books, and it's Japanese Inns and Hot Springs, a guide to Japan's best ryokan and onsen. That's the full title. Cool.
That's right, because when we produced it, we've got Japanese Inns, Hot Spring, and then we got the Japanese, the ryokan and onsen. we weren't sure which way round to do it. We have the Japanese Ryokan and Onsen, and then the subtitle is English, or vice versa. It took us a long time to kind of work out which way around to do it.
I'm curious, when you were putting the book together and doing your research, how many onsens and ryokan did you personally visit?
Okay, well, we've got 40 in the book, and Seki-san went to all 40 because he had to take the photos of them.
Okay.
And we stayed at about 20 of them together.
Oh wow.
Which is really, really tough research. Really, my wife was, every night I was sending her photos and bath photos, food photos.
And I'm going to assume you had a publisher, taking care of this for you.
Yeah, we had the contract beforehand. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, there you go. So this isn't just you going into your savings and like, okay, we're going to try to make this work here.
No. So, well, basically, what happens? I mean, a publisher wouldn't pay for you to do the trips. What happens is we chose the places that we wanted to go to, and then we set up interviews with each of them.
Okay.
So, obviously, the photographer had to go and arrange to shoot every place, and then in some cases, I'd go along and just interview the owner and just have a look at the place to get a sense of what it's like.
Okay.
And then in some places, off season, they let you stay for a night so you can experience it.
Oh, okay.
But the point is, they were all chosen beforehand.
Okay.
So it wasn't a case of, give us a freebie and you can be in the book.
Gotcha.
It's of, we're putting you in the book. Can we come and talk to you? So
nice. Okay. Wow. So
speaking, I suppose that's an important distinction.
So the photographer, you said 80 years old?
Yeah, he's unbelievable. He outdrank me at almost every place we stayed as well, which is quite impressive.
Nice, and he traveled to 40 different onsens. Wow.
Yeah, he lived in London in the 60s and America in the 70s as a business guy. And then he retired, I think, when he was 55.
Okay.
And then just decided, that's it, I'm going to be a photographer until it's time to clock out. And so he's not clocked out yet, and I don't think he will for a long time. But he spent the last 25 years traveling around, taking photos of spas in Asia and hotels in Asia.
That's amazing.
All around Japan. Amazing. And he's got a ton of energy.
Wow. Incredible.
So, every time I was flagging on the trips, like especially the third night on a road trip is always the one that gets me. Just as like, I'd like to go to bed early, The 82-year-old guy is there. Come on, let's go for a drink. Come on. Oh
my gosh, that's amazing. And here I am.
He's someone twice your age is.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
like that.
He's twice my age, and I'm like at 9 o'clock I'm yawning and wanting to nod off. And that involves no travel or drinking.
Yeah, I'm the same. Exactly the same.
So now, the last time we talked, and for all of you guys out there listening, this is a second attempt at this interview. We tried this several months ago in the fall, and because of just tech issues, internet connectivity issues, it didn't work out. And at that point, you had a book that was going to be coming out. Now the book is published and it's available for people to buy.
Yeah.
So tell us where people actually just shamelessly plug yourself and plug the book.
Okay. Well, actually, being traditionally British, that's the difficult thing to do, isn't it? But I've lived overseas long enough that I can ignore that.
Okay.
It's on Amazon.
Nice.
Basically, if it should be available on most Amazons now. It's not on Amazon China yet. I checked the other day.
Okay.
But it's on Amazon Japan. It's on USA, Amazon UK.
All the big ones.
I think it's all of the Amazons, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Although for some reason the UK one it always comes out about a month later. I have no idea why. With any book, Amazon
Weird.
UK is always a little bit slow. And if you're in Japan, I guess the usual suspects like Kinokuniya, Madozen, they should have it. I hope.
Okay.
And also the airports. If you're coming in Narita, Haneda, the bookshops there should have it.
Okay, nice.
Bookshops overseas, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I know that my mum found an old Kyoto guidebook of mine the other day in a bookshop in England, and she was quite excited.
Nice.
But very often they don't seem to make it into bookshops in the UK. So that was a bit of a rarity.
So it's again. So you guys out there listening, it's called Japanese Inns and Hot Springs, a guide to Japan's best ryokan and onsen. And now also you've got a featured picture on your Twitter feed, which by the way, guys, is at Rob Goss Writer. If you're Twitter people, I see another guidebook you've got here called Japan Traveler's Companion: Japan's most famous sites from Okinawa to Hokkaido. So there's another one you've written, huh?
That came out. They were meant to come out 6 months apart, but to do with different production schedules, always shift around and whatnot. That came out at the same time, which I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not. It's always nicer to be able to push one book hard rather than try to do two at once.
Okay.
But basically, it's available in all places. I think it's kind of billed as an alternative guidebook, but there's not much guide information. It's more of a primer on the places you can go in Japan.
Okay.
And because it's got lots of photos in it, it functions as a nice souvenir or the kind of thing you could give as a gift.
Nice.
So, I mean, it's nice. I like it, but I probably won't read it for at least a year because I never can once a book comes out.
Nice. Oh, okay.
It'll be okay.
I was going to say, and again, we're fighting the internet lag here. For you Just Japan podcast listeners, all of the links that we've talked about to the Japanese Inns and Hot Springs book and other books by Rob, they're all going to be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. So go to justjapanstuff.com. Everything will be there. Also, it's going to be all over the Facebook page and the Twitter, all that stuff. I'll be tweeting it out, sharing it on Facebook, all that stuff. So don't worry. It's out there if you missed it. Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have any, if you can say, are you working on anything interesting at the moment with regards to writing about Japan?
Interesting, I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out if I get on in the end. But with the same photographer, we're doing a book on Tokyo at the moment.
Oh, okay.
But rather than looking at Shibuya, Omotesando, and all that kind of stuff, we're focusing on the west of the city and the islands down south.
Okay.
Plus the traditional things you can do in central Tokyo. And that's going to be coming out with a different publisher this time. It's going to be with IBC Publishing, and I think it's going to be out in August, which means I have to finish it quite quickly, and I've not done much of it yet.
Uh-oh.
So
you got to get to work.
So the next couple of months, I'll be writing lots of that, and that'll be out in August.
Okay, nice.
But that'll be nice because on lots of I've done Tokyo guidebooks before, and I've updated rough guides and photos and all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all really nice, but they kind of ignore the islands a little bit, they ignore the west a little bit, and they tend to focus on the modern part of the city rather than the traditional things you can do in the city.
Of course, yeah.
And considering that Seki-san is 82 years old, he knows all sorts about the traditional stuff. So it's been quite good. I mean, he's taken me to loads of places I never knew existed. All around, like Nihonbashi kind of area, Kayabacho, all these small little restaurants that have been there for 50 years and that he used to go to when he worked in the neighborhood as a young man and all. Really interesting.
Cool. Wow. So you've got a really, you've got...
Hopefully
You've got a partner in crime essentially, who's a really amazing source of history and culture in his own right.
Yeah. I mean, and it's entertaining when you take him to somewhere like Omotesando. He's completely a fish out of water, and it's it's hilarious. It's his running commentary is like, what's she wearing? Is that a man or a woman? And that kind of thing. The old guy kind of commentary. It's quite funny.
Nice.
But when you the traditional areas, it's actually. If I can learn it from him as we're writing the book, and hopefully that can be passed on to people that read it.
Yeah, exactly. Nice.
Because I think it's harder to access traditional Tokyo if you're coming from overseas, and especially coming from overseas if you don't speak Japanese.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Okay, here we are, 12 hours later, because we had a few technical issues at the end of the recording last night. So very quick thank you to Kevin for having me on, and thank you to everyone who listened. If anyone wants to say hi afterwards, I'm on Twitter at Rob Goss Writer. I'm also on Instagram with the tag at Tokyo Freelance. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys there. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank Rob for taking the time to sit down with the Just Japan podcast and share his knowledge about a really wonderful aspect of Japanese culture, travel culture. And if you ever have the opportunity to come to Japan and travel, you definitely need to give it a try. I've stayed in a few ryokan. I've definitely enjoyed onsen in my time in Japan, and I highly recommend. So again, Rob, thank you for coming on the podcast. Of course, you go to the show notes at justjapanstuff.com, and you can find all of the links to his contact information, all the stuff he's doing, links to his books and stuff. If you want to, hey guys, pick up a copy of his book. I suggest that, and learn more firsthand or secondhand. Buy the book, come to Japan, and learn firsthand and secondhand through the book. I don't know. Okay. Well, that does it for another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Thank you for taking the time to download the podcast. And remember, you can help the podcast grow by sharing it on your social media with your friends, your family. Spread the word about the Just Japan podcast. And of course, over at YouTube, my YouTube channel, Busan Kevin, I'm putting the podcast over there as well. So if you just want to pop it on YouTube and kick around the house while you're doing things, you can do it that way as well. So that's it, guys. Remember, you can find everything we talked about today over at justjapanstuff.com. Like the Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, all that jazz. And of course, you can also support the show over on Patreon, patreon.com// I'm having trouble talking right now, Just Japan Podcast. So patreon.com/Just Japan Podcast, and you can help us grow that way as well. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Thank you for listening. My name's Kevin. I am a guy who has strong connections with Japan after 10 years of living there, and yeah, I'll be there again. Don't worry about it, guys. So I'm coming to you from Beijing, China, talking about Japan. And wherever you are in the world, folks, I hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. I'll be talking to you real soon.
What?